Welcome back to Oysters, Clams, and Cockles. I am your resort manager, Ross Bolen, here with concierge extraordinaire, Barrett Dudley. And Barrett, I have perhaps never been more excited to discuss a non-Game of Thrones episode of television with you.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's high praise.
It's really saying something, isn't it?
This episode is the one that really that sent you over the edge, huh?
Whew, it did, and we have a lot to discuss today. But before we jump in to the penultimate episode of The White Lotus, wanted to take a second to ask for your support rolling into 2023. There are a few ways you can help us out here at Oysters, Clams, and Cockles. Number one, buying merch from bolenmedia.com/shop. Get yourself an OCC shirt. We've got House of the Dragon themed stuff. We've got hats. We've got coffee cups. You can also support our sponsors by using our dedicated URL and or code when one of our sponsors strikes your fancy, of course. But perhaps most importantly, by going to patreon.com/oystersclamscockles and enjoying even more OCC in exchange for a minimum monthly pledge of just $5. So what do you get when you join our Patreon? First of all, further digestion and discussion of every episode of The White Lotus, driven by hotline calls from members of our Mollusk Militia tier on Patreon. But also, when you join, you immediately gain access to further digestion of every episode of House of the Dragon, driven by hotline calls from members of the Mollusk Militia. And that's an additional 10 episodes of House of the Dragon discussion, I believe, available immediately upon sign-up, if I'm not mistaken. And then Barrett and I did a companion podcast for every single episode of HBO's classic crime drama, The Sopranos, which is friendly to first-time viewers like Barrett was, and repeat watchers like I am. It was like my 7th or 8th time through. Again, all of which you gain access immediately when you sign up on patreon.com/oystersclamscockles today. We've got 1,248 members of the Clam Fam there as when I last checked.
Wow.
The Clam Fam, as we affectionately refer to our listenership. If you are new here, I know a lot of you are. And that's how many people are currently supporting the podcast on patreon.com/oystersclamscockles. If we can get to like 4,000 of you on Patreon, then Barrett might be able to afford to focus full-time on OCC. He has a full-time job outside of this. Again, I would recommend or remind all of you. But yeah, so for those of you who get upset when we have to drop like a day late, that would likely solve that problem. I'm just saying. Patreon.com/oystersclamscockles. Now let's dive into The White Lotus Season 2, penultimate episode 6, Barrett. And we'll start off with a very quick scene at the opening of Albie once again pounding out Lucia, the sex worker.
Was that the very beginning scene?
Yeah, yeah, it was. She's pulling the long con there.
We didn't see if he was still wearing socks.
Not clear.
It didn't pan down to his feet.
But later in the episode,
unfortunate.
He did have some, like, what are those called? They're not ankle socks, and they're not like the tall socks. They're somewhere in between. He had an awkward length of awkward white guy socks on later in the episode.
All right.
But we quickly move on to Ethan telling Harper that he doesn't think she believes him with regard to the condom she found in the room and the whole situation with Cameron and the sex workers. Harper tells him they aren't honest with each other about how they aren't attracted to each other anymore, or at least he's not attracted to her, she says. And we got, in the preview last week, we knew this conversation was coming. Mm-hmm. We weren't quite sure how it was going to be framed up, of course, but she says, I get it. You're on top of the world right now. You can sleep with whoever you want, and you're stuck with me. It makes sense that you'd want to have sex with an Italian hooker. And she suggests that something perhaps has died in their relationship. She says, we are too young to be this old, Ethan. And before Barrett and I dive into the context of this conversation, I would just add, we are both in our mid-30s, Barrett and I, in committed relationships. So frankly, we are heroes for even wading into this territory for you people, for your entertainment. But we do it anyway because that's how much the Clam Fam means to us. Now, I can go first because I'm divorced. A lot of my past relationship stuff is very public as a result of the Ross Bolen podcast anyway. And I'll just say, this is a very common thing that I think isn't just, for people in their mid-30s necessarily, but for people in long-term relationships at any point in life. as we've discussed prior, you do go through like ups and downs, right? And you do have scenarios like perhaps a couple's vacation that can sort of frame you up against another relationship that is a lot different than yours, and suddenly you're questioning everything about what you've got going on with your significant other. And just up front, that is not an unusual thing. I would say that is a normal part of relationship. It's just that how you handle it is kind of the determining factor in whether or not you have a healthy relationship or your relationship continues. And these two folks don't seem to be handling it particularly well.
Yeah, it's tough because you watch them have this conversation, you really feel for them, and I think just to speak really broadly, our show here covering the White Lotus season 2. Really catching steam. I'd say this is maybe the most successful the show has ever been outside of a Game of Thrones show. I don't.
100%.
You probably have the data to back that up.
It absolutely is. Yes.
And I when I talk to people anecdotally, whether it's like friends or coworkers or whoever, everybody is loving this show. And I think that's mostly because the people that I talk to are my peers and they're in the same age range and we're all in relationships and like
it's relatable.
That watching these 4 people and comparing and contrasting them and listening to the conversations and thinking about their lives and relating them to our own is just like, it's catnip for us. And it's so well written, it's so well done, and it's kind of, it's so enjoyable and also excruciating, right? So you're just like, you're having all of your, your buttons pushed here watching them. And I think, there are things that you kind of like learn when you're an adult. Like I always consider one of the big ones for me is like you turn 30 and you suddenly realize that like miscarriage is a totally normal thing that happens all the damn time that nobody really talks about.
Right.
Like that type of thing.
Right.
This is another one that that you discover, but that nobody really talks about and you don't even like get to discover. But that's like, how much sex is the right amount of sex?
Right.
What's a healthy relationship look like? What are you supposed to be doing? How do you compare to your peers in this regard?
How affectionate should you be with each other in public?
Right. And it's like, when it comes down to it, it's just different strokes for different folks. And so there is not really a right answer. The point here between Ethan and Harper, I think, is that they are not happy with what they are doing.
Well, and they're allowing, and this is the real thing for me, the big takeaway for me, and one of the huge lessons I've learned going into my 30s and to my second marriage has been that if you allow yourself to compare your relationship to others, similarly to how we all have an issue in this modern day and age with comparing our lives to other people's based on social media, if you compare your relationship based on a snapshot, right, with another group in a vacation setting or really a dinner, anything, man, that's tough sledding because you never know what other people have going on behind the scenes. Just like the Spillers don't know what's going on with Cameron and Daphne behind the scenes.
That's right.
And it's not fair to your relationship. It's really unhealthy for your relationship, for you as a person. And what I love about the scenario that unfolds in this show is you see what it does. Ethan, the rest of the episode this is one of the most relatable story arcs I've ever seen written on TV, where like I think every guy I know, every straight hetero dude I know at some point that has been in a committed relationship has had something similar to this. I'm not saying in their 30s necessarily, maybe in college, maybe in high school, but like when you were in a relationship and suddenly you found yourself distrusting of the other person, and your mind and imagination, if you allow it to, it will destroy you, right? The paranoia that comes with that of like not knowing if this person is being faithful to you, not knowing if they really love you or they're still attracted to you or they even want to have sex with you, all of those things. And I'm sure it applies to both sides, women and men. But being a straight dude, that's the side of it that I can speak to. And watching him unravel is just, this is some of Mike White's best storytelling right here to me, because the more brutally honest you can be about things as a writer, the better they're going to translate on screen, right?
Yep.
So this shit here, whew. And then on the other side of the adjoining rooms, you've got Daphne telling Cameron that Harper is pretty sure they did something bad while they were on the girls' trip in Noto. And Cameron launches back into like the playful, like, you abandoned me and now you must pay. weird dynamic of their relationship that they've got going on, right? The weird, it's almost like role playing. Like they enjoy the secrecy.
It is, but it's at the same time, what I was reading here is that like they're able to be like really affectionate and kind of playful and sexy with each other, but it's really, really distorted through this lens of the fact that he's a bullshitting liar that takes any of these accusations and they just fucking bounce off him like he's, made of rubber, right? He's the man's Kevlar. And like the mechanism that he's using here is to just like deflect. And he turns on the charm. He turns on the sexiness to like, to basically shut it down.
Yeah.
So that's also not totally normal or healthy. Right?
No, but that's what's so beautiful about it. It makes that point like that I was kind of touching on earlier, where if you just look at it through the high level lens of this scene, you're like, see, look how happy they are. They're able to, they have their own weird dynamic, sure, but they're sexy and they're fun. But if you delve deeper, it's like, no, this dude is the dark triad personality that they were, that got brought up earlier in the season. And he's working the situation. Now, I think what we found out last week when Daphne shows Harper that photo of her child that, in my opinion, is 100% her trainers that had people losing their fucking minds.
Yeah, we did not come back. We did not touch on that this episode.
So. It did not come up at all. But I think when you consider that, Daphne is fully aware of the game he's playing.
Yeah,
I just don't think she's doing such a good job handling it on her side that he has no clue. He thinks his charm and this weird game he plays does completely shut it down.
Yeah.
But in Daphne's mind, I think she's fully aware of what he's doing.
Yes, I agree.
So back at the Palazzo, Portia and Tanya have breakfast together and they recap their 2 nights. Madame Butterfly died. That was Tanya's night. And then Portia and Jack almost got arrested skipping out on a bill that, as Tanya puts it, the restaurant they were at costs $1, right? I think that's the way.
An arancini costs $1.
Yeah.
Like, why would you skip out on that? Who would skip out on that? Like, yeah.
And she tells Portia that she doesn't think Quentin is Jack's uncle, but doesn't tell her why. Just that she has a strong hunch, and she says,
"Strong hunch."
Yeah, a strong hunch. She says, "When you're empty inside, when you have no direction, you'll end up in some crazy places, but you'll still be lost." And Portia's like, "What are you trying to say?" And she says, "Get your shit together, Portia." And again, it's a fun one because this applies to all age ranges, right? She's telling that to Portia, but she's also sort of applying it to herself, Tanya, and a little bit, maybe not so self-aware, but that's something that kind of goes throughout your life. When you feel lost or you feel sort of directionless, if you go off and just sort of wander, you may find excitement. You may find even what it is you were looking for, but technically you're still going to be lost. And until you reckon with that and really plant your feet somewhere, it doesn't change things.
What was the name of this episode?
Oh, Abductions.
Abductions.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was, just thinking about that line there and her talking about Portia being empty inside. That's something that we've heard before. We've heard Portia say something about herself that really
she finds everything to be boring.
Fits into that as well.
She gets into it later in this episode, even with the satisfaction conversation, right?
Yep. And that idea of I think that she's kind of our young person example of that. With the kind of hollow nihilism that we see a lot of young people display these days. And then on kind of the flip side, a lot of the other people in this episode are looking for something. In fact, we get the parallel scene with Bert and Dominic talking about how they both experienced this wanderlust, essentially.
Right.
And that they both would have left Terra d'Aqua or whatever the town is called.
Close enough.
Because they are searchers, right? They would have left in search of something due to their wanderlust. And so I think that you could probably make the case for everybody in this episode that they're kind of out there looking for something, looking to make some type of connection or find something that like fills them.
Fulfills them, yeah. I mean, look at the irony of it's Tanya saying this to Portia, and by the end of the episode, we know what Tanya's doing. She herself is kind of filling a hole.
Yeah.
With this whole party and whole situation that we'll get to later. Quentin comes in and sort of interrupts the ladies there after Tanya says, get your shit together. And Tanya tells him she heard strange noises in the night, so she didn't sleep well. And he responds by telling her they need her refreshed because she is the guest of honor tonight.
Pineapple mimosas.
No, thank you, sir. Today's episode is brought to you by Chime. What's the first thing you do when you wake up? Is it checking on your credit score? I didn't think so. At Chime, that's exactly what they do. With their secure Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card, you can start to build credit with your own money. Chime reports your payments to credit bureaus to help you build credit over time. Their members see an increase of 30 points on average. All of this with no annual fees, large security deposits, or credit checks to apply. So start your credit journey with Chime. Sign up takes only 2 minutes. It doesn't affect your credit score. Get started at chime.com/dragon. That's CHIME.com/dragon. The Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card is issued by Stride Bank. NA pursuant to a license from Visa, USA Chime checking account, and $200 qualifying direct deposit required to apply for the secured Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card. Regular on-time payment history can have a positive impact on your credit score. Impact to your score may vary, and some users' scores may not improve. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees may apply, except at MoneyPass ATMs and a 7-Eleven or any Allpoint or Visa Plus Alliance ATM. So next, Lucia finds out from the front desk that Cameron and Ethan still haven't left her an envelope filled with cash. Remember, Cameron was like, I'll drop off the money, the rest of the money at the front desk, I'll leave an envelope, whatever.
Yep.
That leads to Lucia and Mia confronting Ethan about the money because they see him walk by about to go on his run, which leads to Harper seeing Ethan talking with two prostitutes right after their intense relationship conversation. Not good timing. And the further unraveling of the spillers occurs. So I would just note, few people, this is like the 5th time I've given her credit for this, few people on the face of the earth do better I am ready to go crazy face than Aubrey Plaza. She is very, very good. So as a result of that whole situation, Ethan asks Cameron to vouch for him with Harper, which is stupid because it opens the door for Cameron to be in a position to seek alone time with Harper without really needing a reason anymore, right? Just from a strategic standpoint, misstep there by Ethan, number probably 95 in a row. So Cameron ends up going and getting drinks with Harper while Ethan goes on an angry swim into the ocean a la Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump.
Or a la the brothers in Gattaca who swim out in the ocean to see who can go the farthest.
What the hell is Gattaca? What's Gattaca?
Oh, come on.
No, I don't know.
Jude Law, Uma Thurman, Ethan Hawke.
Is it a film?
Yes.
Is it one I need to watch?
Oh, my God. Dude, yes. Watch Gattaca tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Now I have a movie recommendation to go watch. But Ethan ends up going back to his room, right, out of paranoia. The door is latched shut.
Yeah.
And he becomes insanely suspicious of Harper and Cameron and starts to really, really unravel with jealousy, and his imagination goes completely wild. He has daydreams later in the episode of them passionately hooking up on the table in his room.
Yeah, it's a hot hookup.
Barrett, it was very passionate. Do you think anything actually happened between Cameron and Harper in this episode?
No, I don't. Here are a few important things to remember. Harper continues to become more and more suspicious of Ethan as the day goes on.
Right.
What a pro move, by the way, as an aside, for Cameron to direct the party into Ethan's room. That is just like top level shitbag.
Oh, you mean with Lucia and Mia earlier?
Knows what he's doing.
Oh, yeah.
Activity. Keeps his room completely scot-free. Not going to be any evidence regardless of what happens.
That's why I didn't give a shit about leaving the condom
on his
behind.
Side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just, that is, and that just goes back to the days of college, right? You never want the party to be in your room.
No, then your room's getting destroyed.
Yeah, you want to go fuck up somebody else's room.
Yeah, we destroyed your room way too many times. You made this mistake, Barrett.
I did. That's how I know.
It makes me ask the question if, you just made me think of this. It's not something I've really been considering. But did he leave that condom in there on purpose?
It's a question worth asking. Yeah. Now, so here's the other thing, though. So as she's becoming more and more suspicious of Ethan, She has already come up with all the reasons why he would cheat on her.
Right.
At the same time, I think she also knows that Cameron is a piece of shit. I don't think she likes Daphne and Cameron. I think that she is out to do something destructive to their relationship as well. But after that conversation at the winery a couple episodes ago, she also knows the dynamic that Ethan and Cameron had in college.
Yes.
Where Ethan was constantly getting cucked by Cameron, basically.
Right. Every time he liked a girl, Cameron would swoop in and bang her.
She has all the tools and the weapons and all the chess pieces on the board to completely fuck with Ethan here. And I think that's what she's doing.
So I think that's a very good point. It's way more, okay, well, you made the horrible mistake of doing Molly and partying with prostitutes. Whether or not you banged one is kind of beside the point now. I am going to play the game back, but not to the extent that she would go and hook up with this dude she despises, right?
I don't think so.
Way more to mess with with Ethan's head, rather. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that all the door lock, that's so easy. That just triggers somebody. Immediately you think something's up.
Yeah.
Why would you lock it? Why would you lock it? Why would you do that? You haven't been doing that. You just came in here by yourself. You're going to be in and out. Why would you lock it?
You never do that.
Like there's no good explanation for it. And I think she knows that. I think all the things it's too easy to cook this up. And that's my read on what's going on. Cause I think she is, and like you said, it really doesn't matter whether he did or didn't, right? He partied with the hookers. He lied about it. And their relationship is in the gutter right now because they're not having any sex and neither one of them really knows what to do about it. Ethan's a space cadet, won't do anything, ignoring all the advances.
He just goes and runs and watches porn immediately afterward.
I think she's just fucking with him.
Yeah, it's also interesting. They've really, the pornography side of it, I want to hit real quick. Like, I read this Instagram slide the other day that was like, if you're a man, I follow a lot of therapy accounts because I've been in therapy for a while now, and it was like, if you're a man, there are a few different reasons you could use pornography. Maybe one of them isn't so unhealthy, it's just a natural side of it, but maybe one of them is avoiding intimacy with your partner or like trying to fill the void with of a lack of intimacy with your partner, right?
Yeah.
And I thought those were very true, and they really paint that picture in this episode that's if you... For everybody that was like me going, why are they showing us like the Pornhub page and the YouPorn page? It's just fucking weird that they're just giving like free advertising to porn companies.
Yeah.
But no, it's really hitting on something there that this can be a very big like red flag. If you're in a relationship and you're constantly having to turn to porn to fill a void, it's something you need to be careful of. And again, I think that definitely applies to both males and females. It just probably is more stereotypically a male issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, this the way Harper plays Ethan like a fiddle. And what you just said was so important that it almost doesn't matter if he banged the prostitutes, right? Well, it almost doesn't matter if Harper hooked up with Cameron.
Right.
Because she's going to make him feel it.
Yeah.
Regardless. And I think the way she's trying to teach him a lesson isn't going to go the way she planned on it. But it is easy to see, like, especially based on all these conversations with Daphne about how her and Cameron play games with each other in the power struggle in their relationship. Like, she's just like, well, screw it. I'm going to play back.
The only thing that I could see factoring in here and why I might be wrong is because of one of the things that I just said, which is that she doesn't like Cam. I think she doesn't like the relationship that Cam and Daphne have. And if she really, and you know, when she told Daphne that she thinks something happened and gets completely blown off for it, right?
Yeah.
Well, the one way to like make her see it would be to do it herself.
Sure.
And so that is certainly a lurking possibility.
It is. I won't say it's not, especially after all the things I said weren't possible last week that indeed were possible. Because now here's the problem. If she is doing that, it isn't going to work. The Sullivans are fully aware of their shittiness and they don't care. So the beauty and irony of it would be that I think Harper would destroy her own relationship and the Sullivans would continue on just as shitty as they were before, happy to be fake with their, with the rest of it. So yeah, speaking of the Sullivans, Daphne goes and gets a massage from Timothy Chalamet with muscles, as she puts it. And that feeds even further into her and Cameron's weird dynamic when he comes back. She comes back out and tells everybody, like, I got this massage from Timothée Chalamet with muscles. And he's like, oh, did he touch your boobs? And she's like, ooh, yeah, asked him to. And he's like, I want a fucking divorce. And like climbs on top of her and they start like their passionate thing again.
Yeah.
They're just so cringe and strange. But as a result of all this, Ethan ends up confronting Cameron at dinner that night and asking him.
Him just sitting there with the look on his face is so funny.
Like he's about to explode.
Yeah.
He asks Cameron if he was in their room. He calls him out for flirting with his wife. He says, I know what you're doing, man, which is basically him saying you're doing exactly what you did in college and that I don't like it. And things get really, 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 really tense between the two of them. And, of course, the girls. Oh, he even tells him, I know you got naked in front of her the first day we were here when I let you borrow my swimsuit.
Yeah.
And Cameron goes, are you losing it, man? Which was, I mean, it's like this guy Cameron has been, like you said earlier, I think he's just been doing this for so long. He's such a master of deception at this point that there's no way he's going to let Ethan in on what he is doing or not doing, right? He's just going to completely deny it, make him feel like he's losing his mind, gaslight him basically into further unraveling. Let's jump to the DeGrassos. They break the fast together and discuss the potential of meeting their extended family on this trip into whatever the name of the town, Luca de Brazzo.
Terra d'Aqua, I think?
Terra d'Aqua, something like that. They have this extended family they're searching for or whatever they're going to try to find on this trip. Albie announces he found them a translator, and guess who the translator is, Barrett?
Oh, it's Lucia.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Bert tells Dominic to just be cool about it when he does find out that it's Lucia. And let's just cover this whole trip and the relatives right now. It does not go well.
No part of this trip goes
well. First of all, Lucia's alleged pimp, Alessio, ends up following the DeGrasso crew, and a very lame car chase ensues, which is funny because it's wild seeing Michael Imperioli. I talked about our Sopranos companion podcast earlier on patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles. Michael Imperioli as a non-street savvy character is so funny because it's like I kept expecting him to like stop the car, whip out a pistol and unload on these guys. But instead he's like, what should I do? Like, what do I do? Do I speed up? Do I slow down? And eventually, she has him pull over or whatever.
So are you bumping on Imperioli as like a just a normal dude in this show at all? Like, are you too deep? Are you too deep in Sopranos world?
It's a little difficult for me.
Okay.
Like, I mean this is the first scene where I was really like, wow, it is strange seeing him play a not hard ass organized crime guy.
He looks so much. I mean, he's obviously like, this is not a knock on him. He's aged 20 plus years since, or no,
been a
not
long
20,
ass
not
time.
20 plus years, but he's aged 15, 16 years since The Sopranos ended. And it's that transition period where you go from looking like you're in your 30s to looking like you're in your 50s, right? Like it's just a difference. And so the hair is gray and he's got a few extra pounds on him. And then I don't know if this is intentional or not, but the black sunglasses that are like too wide for his face.
Yeah.
Like totally just, I don't know. There's something about them to just sell me on Imperioli as not
a badass.
Not Chrissy.
Not Christopher Moltisanti,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. It's just kind of interesting because it's just such an old, it's like such an old rich guy thing to have like sunglasses that don't really fit with the rest of what you're wearing,
and that you're not really pulling off.
That you're not really pulling off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's also funny because that is the style of sunglasses he wears in real life. Michael Imperioli is he's not necessarily playing himself on this show, but certainly a version of himself. He's a very, very strange cat. And I mean that with all due respect, almost as a compliment. All due respect, Barrett. But he holds like meditation classes on Zoom at like 7 a.m. that you can go, like you and I could go sign up for and be a part of.
Okay.
Like we could go do it. And I don't think that many people do. And it's like a cool, weird experience you can have with Michael Imperioli leading you in a meditation course. He's very into like Eastern spiritualism or whatever it's called.
Some of that does come through. He's very zen in this show for the most part.
For sure. And if you follow his Instagram account, it's pretty political. I'll warn you on that. I'll just throw that out there. But he's a very interesting dude, very artsy, very into that like Eastern spiritual stuff, like I said. And it's just fascinating to really get to know him as a person through his social media stuff versus like the only character that I've ever really known him as was Christopher Moltisanti before this season of The White Lotus, who is pretty much the complete and polar opposite of Michael Imperioli in real life. It's interesting stuff. So
Lucia, Alessio, he chases him. They pull over. In the end, she agrees to go back with Alessio, tells these guys not to worry about it. Is your mind changing at all on what's happening here?
Am I sold on that maybe actually being her pimp?
Yeah.
No, she's completely orchestrated this. This guy's in on the scam. She may be cutting him a slice of the
100%.
pie.
Yeah.
But that is not her pimp, man. There's no way. Again, I think the giveaway for me is that Mia would have been involved in the conversation somehow. She would have been sharing with Mia or calling Mia, being like, "You're not going to believe this," but Alessio showed up. He's demanding money. At no point does she discuss Alessio ever before in the season, so it seems like bullshit to me.
It's all just a little too convenient, I think, for me as well. The fact, that he's on the street that they're walking on, and then that he knows that they're going to Terra d'Aqua, and
so he can follow
them. And then the fact that she really, with very little fight, agrees to go with him, and then is just back at the hotel later, like no questions asked, no harm, no foul, right?
Right. To continue her con.
Obviously, the conversation that she has with Albie later in this episode, where she is clearly building up to telling him that for like 15,000 euro, she can be free of all this and go with him, whereupon she will disappear with 15,000 euro from Albie and his parents, basically. It is very clearly, this is still just like a long con being played out here. We heard her tell Mia that this guy's so innocent and nice and young and rich. And so it's I'm still very, very strongly in the camp that this is all a game and that Alessio is not actually her pimp.
Yeah, she basically told Mia this guy's an easy mark, right?
Yeah.
And my wife had the same take as you, that she thinks in the end it's going to be like an Albie can take her to America thing almost, like maybe not necessarily, but like run away with her sort of, like you pay this amount of money and I'm yours.
Yep.
And I could definitely see it going that direction. So when she leaves, Lucia, it leaves the DeGrassos with no translator. And immediately I was just like, are they still going to go to the house? Because this is going to be really fucking awkward. And of course it was. But fascinating part of it to me is that women seem to be the only remaining descendants in the DeGrasso family that are there in Acqua di Gio. And maybe the women killed all the DeGrasso men for being unfaithful scumbags. That was almost one of my reads. But it's also a thing that comes up in The Sopranos when they go over to Italy.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, all of the men are dead or in prison because they all do mafia shit. So like we're all that's left sort of thing.
Yeah. To be honest, I didn't have a good read on what
this meant.
What this meant. No. They obviously get like very, very vehemently shooed away.
I curse you and your kind. She does curse them.
She says that she's going to throw the artichoke at their head.
Yeah.
Don't
want that.
Don't want that.
Nope.
She's a kind of a witchy old lady, right? So it's kind of spooky.
Yeah.
Even though her threats are not quite as spooky.
Well, she's pretty frail. Yeah, her teeth don't look great, but at least it wasn't a steak she was threatening to throw at anybody's head.
But great point. The two younger ladies outside, they kind of know that whoever walks in there is gonna have an artichoke thrown at their head.
She's like, oh yeah, go sure, yeah, that'll be great. Go talk to our mom, sure.
But yes, I think that. I don't know if the fact that there were three women there was supposed to signal or mean anything, but they obviously did not get what they were hoping for. They talk at breakfast earlier. Dom talks about how a guy they knew, he did the same thing, and he found his relatives, and they spent a whole day reconnecting and drinking wine and eating pasta and like having this big homecoming where they met a bunch of new relatives, had a great time. And had this new, knowledge about their heritage and their family and
further connection to their whole identity, right?
Exactly. And they the reception that they get is obviously very far from that.
The only other read I had was that it's like, it's American entitlement, human entitlement to even think that anyone would give a shit that you're from there. You're going and bothering these people during their life, right? And then they're like, we don't care at all. We'll throw an artichoke at your head. I curse you and you're kind. Get the hell out of here.
So that is, I'm glad you said that, because that actually does remind me of one of the things that was running through my head when this scene played out. But like, yeah, I think American entitlement is a good way to put it, because just anybody listening, you think about, like, they're romanticizing a culture because it's not theirs, right? Think about somebody showing up on your doorstep, not speaking your language, and being like, I'm your family.
We bailed, though, because this place sucks. We went to America and crushed it. My son's a bigwig in Hollywood, but yeah, we just wanted to come through and connect with you. Yeah, exactly. You would be like, get the fuck out of here. I've got work to do.
Yeah, anybody showing up at your house unannounced, no call, no text, no nothing, being like, I'm your family,
is weird.
It's weird.
Why would you believe them even?
No, right? You were definitely not going to just be inviting these people, these randos, into your house to be like, sure, let's reconnect and drink wine. No, that's not how it would go.
Could be a scam.
So why, you're kind of, you're putting that on them because why?
Right. Well, because you want something out of it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it was probably the reception that they kind of deserved a little, in a way.
Especially showing up without a translator. Of course that's what they deserve, right? And the translator they were going to bring is a, sex worker. Just a weird situation. So Portia and Jack go and spend the day together getting pissed, and Jack starts to show his true self, right? He sort of drops the mask a little bit, right?
This Jack guy.
Uh-huh.
You ever seen anybody with calves like that? My God.
They're not like my calves, Barry.
They're like drawn on. They're like does this guy get calf implants?
It's like the Hercules animated film.
Yes.
He's got those calves.
Or is he just like 25 but like already has the calves of like a 40-year-old dad that coaches baseball and mows the baseball fields?
I don't know. This guy, he looks like he does get into like a soccer chant when he's shit-faced. He's got like soccer guy calves. Like
they are quite something there. Hard to mess.
Yeah, Quentin watches Jack leave with Portia in the car.
Yeah, in a very leering way.
He's smoking a cig. The Marlboro smoke is
good.
Yes, good, exactly. And it's clear Quentin is in on...
Yeah, he's sent them away.
Yes, Jack is taking Portia away so that she's not there for the party, so that Tanya will be alone, right?
Yes.
Jack and Portia end up having this very interesting conversation to me, probably one of the more interesting conversations in the whole episode, where Portia's like, the world is a mess. And he's like, what's wrong with it? And he gets into like... this is the best time to be alive in human history. What do you wish you were back in the medieval ages when everybody was just hacking each other to bits constantly? It was a total shitstorm. There was no technology, no medicine. Everybody died by 35 sort of argument, right?
Yeah.
Like, what's wrong with this? She basically argues it's the best time in the history of humanity on the best planet in the history of planets, right?
Yep.
And honestly, I think for all of us, we needed to hear that a little bit, right? On some level, he's not wrong, because the pandemic and the last few years have really made everyone on the whole a little bit more skeptical of how good things may or may not be in this place. And the news, the 24-hour news cycle, and social media and politics and disaster after disaster after disaster have us all sort of inundated with negativity, where it's so easy to feel like the world is a shithole. It's on fire. I'm depressed and anxious about it every day. I fucking hate this place, and we live in the worst time in the history of humans. Now, then you've got this guy, Jack, who at this point I'm pretty sure is also a sex worker, who comes from nothing, who's found himself in sort of a fortuitous situation, in some ways you could argue, who sees the world from a completely different angle, that this is the best time you could have ever been alive, that we should find ways to appreciate it, essentially, and it's all about perspective is really the whole point. That's the whole point that I took from it. Like, you can choose to focus on the negativity and the shit, or you can choose to focus on the things that are more positive about this time than the past, perhaps. And it's a constant everyday struggle for me personally, so it's something I identified with on a really high level. Like, there have been times the last few years where I felt exactly like Portia. I was like, is everything just boring? Is this all just shit? Is the rest of this just going to be me being miserable because the world is a miserable place and I'm surrounded by misery? Yeah. And I've come out of that a bit, but it was still good to hear it come out of a character's mouth on a TV screen, albeit a character that I don't necessarily like.
Yeah. I think that there's obviously like a lot of truth in what he says. It's just it's also very, in a way, short-sighted way to look at the world in front of you, right? And so it's kind of like, it is kind of the polar opposite of what Portia is saying.
Yeah.
So, right, like a lot of things that it feels like the right way to approach is somewhere in the middle, because and I don't have any data in front of me, but like since the beginning of time, there have always been the haves and the have-nots. And so I think the important thing is to feel so lucky and grateful and appreciative for landing in like a spot that you and I did, or Portia did, right? Where
you even have the privilege to be that upset.
The privilege to be, yeah, exactly, and to look around and consider on broad terms, on a global scale, how the world is messed up. Because to use a reference point that we heard, ad nauseum through our childhood, the children starving in Africa don't have that the luxury of that viewpoint, do they?
Sure.
Right. So there's the acknowledgement that there is shittiness and poverty and hunger and famine and war and all that is obviously like very important to like be a whole person, to be a well-rounded, well-adjusted, appreciative, grateful person.
Because otherwise you're like the Sullivans.
Yeah, right. Or Jack, who just think that there's nothing wrong because we're in an okay spot. So everything's okay.
Well, I mean, as he puts it later in the episode, he's like, you've never been in a hole like I was. You shouldn't be bitching about your life because you don't even know what difficult challenges look like.
Yeah.
And that's often how I feel.
Honestly, that piece of what he said was probably like the
deeper part.
The realest shit he ever wrote. Shouts to Jeezy. The fact that he has actually been through real hardship is like kind of what gives him, the like almost like the clearance to have that outlook.
Sure.
Like I've been through the shit, so I can say that that this is okay.
And it's not that either of them are wrong. It's that those are their two perspectives,
right,
and each of us is kind of responsible for shaping our perspective in a way that isn't, I guess, unfair to all of the other facts on the table, right? So,
right, but also like maintaining a healthy life.
For sure.
We've talked about this.
You can't let it just kill you.
And this is it's a common motif, I think, through all like the drama television that we watch, because we had similar conversations about AJ's kind of last arc in the season of The Sopranos.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Because he has that same outlook that Portia's kind of conveying here. And I think we've talked about it in Succession and
fucking
like
internet,
a bunch of other shows, right? Where it's you have to live life. You have to, if you're in the position to enjoy yourself and have fun, it's great to be able to do that, and you have to be able to do that to stay sane. But it's also totally reasonable to acknowledge that there is shittiness out there as well.
And suffering, yeah. Definitely.
But on to the rest of their time here, where Portia is beginning to feel more and more like a prisoner, I would say.
Definitely feels like she was abducted, right?
Yes.
It's one of the things after the episode I was like, so why was it called abductions? But then you start to piece it together. Yep. There's like 3 or 4 of them that occur here. Jack gets pissed, drunk, for all the Americans listening.
Yeah.
He won't allow them to go back to the palazzo, pretty obviously intentionally. Portia sort of starts to become suspicious, and then he ends up drunkenly telling her back in their hotel room that he's used his uncle, air quotes, uncle, credit card to rent, that he isn't rich anymore because he spent most of it, and he's about to come into a ton of money, and that Jack just feels fortunate that he was able to help him because Quentin got him out of a very deep, very dark hole, much like a butthole, Barrett. And this is where it really started to come together, and I was like, oh boy, which will take us to the final part of the episode. Today's episode is also brought to you by NordVPN. NordVPN here to drastically enhance your web browsing experience and data security. Nobody likes to be watched or tracked, even if they have nothing to hide. That's why it's important to step up your privacy game whenever possible. If you aren't using a VPN right now, you're currently open to having your internet data creeped on in a big way. VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. It's a service that protects your internet connection and privacy online, creates an encrypted tunnel for your data, protects your online identity by hiding your IP address, allows you to use public Wi-Fi hotspots safely, and more. VPNs are the only way to be sure that your real location and IP address are hidden, your online data is encrypted, and your browsing history is invisible to your internet service provider and other third parties. Everybody who cares about their privacy should be using a VPN right now, and NordVPN is the best and fastest VPN provider in the business. NordVPN is software, not hardware. It's super easy to use across every major platform, whether you're on Windows, Android, iOS, Mac OS, all of them. Even your Android TV supports NordVPN. You can connect with just one click or enable auto connect for zero-click protection. I personally love NordVPN because if you travel abroad, finally get that vacation in, maybe you go to Italy, let's say, you can make sure you still have access to your favorite shows and movies from your home country on location-based streamers like Netflix using NordVPN. And because at this point, obviously, I think it's important we all take our steps to protect our privacy online. So grab your exclusive OCC NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/OCC. You get a huge discount on your NordVPN plan, plus free threat protection, plus 4 months for free. This deal is completely risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose except a sense of insecurity. There is a link for this deal in the description of our podcast episode. Thank you to NordVPN for supporting OCC, the Clam Fam, and our online security. Again, that's NORD, nordvpn.com/OCC, code OCC. So, let's talk about the party that Quentin throws.
The party.
It is at the Palazzo. Again, Portia's off with Jack. She's been taken away, abducted, distracted. And Quentin has brought in Nicolo, the mafia man who is infamously well hung and has the best party favors, cocaine. I would add, when Nicolo walked out nude later in the episode, I was like, I guess he's more of a grower than a shower.
That's right. Yeah.
Because this was not like an astoundingly large penis by any means.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's not. And but these guys, Quentin and Nicolo, they get Tanya absolutely ripped on cocaine.
Yeah, yeah.
And
there's a lot of gator tails being blown down.
Dude, I thought they were going to spike her blow with fentanyl or something. I was like, or try to get her to overdose because she was like, I haven't done this in a long time. And then she does like 37 lines, which is too many.
I would really, really appreciate the U.S. government and powers that be to get a hold on the whole fentanyl situation, because I can no longer enjoy drug scenes in movies and television shows because of that thought exactly. I'm like, oh, she's going to OD because it's probably cut with fentanyl.
Probably spiked.
She's going to die. She's going to die of the fentanyl overdose. I'm making light of it here. It's obviously extremely sad and a massive, massive problem. But like, remember when drugs were just fun?
Yeah, I do. I did a lot of them. And before fentanyl even existed, and I'd never heard of it in my whole, up until probably late 20s.
Remember when like the only danger was like, accidentally smoking some fry?
Yeah, at one point I actually did crack by accident instead of coke, which was really, and that was just out of a level of ignorance. Like I didn't know enough. I was in high school.
Remember when the only thing they were cutting your coke was laxative?
Yeah, or baby powder, so that you'd shit violently.
Yeah, what happened in those days?
Those were the good old days, Barrett.
So,
but this is pure.
This is very pure. It has the mafia connection, so it hasn't been stepped on yet.
Nicolo
and I thought this is kind of where, like last week another thing that I guess we were semi-ish wrong about is like how deep they would go to the mafia connection.
Yes.
But I thought that I still thought this was in the realm of what we were talking about, where it's like nodded to, it's kind of feigned at, like, oh, we don't say that word in Palermo, right?
Yeah.
And this guy like maybe has a connection, but who knows what it is.
Right.
Well,
because Quentin's completely full of shit. We don't even know.
Right, exactly. So I thought this was still kind of like a wink, wink, a connection to it. It exists. It's here. We think about it, but not like it's not become a full-on mafia setup yet.
Right.
This is just another player in the game who maybe or maybe not, or maybe does not have ties to some type of organized crime on the in the local area. But going back to what you originally said. I was thinking like, are they gonna try to make her OD? Are they gonna cut hers with something or drug her? I didn't know what was going on. The party looks absolutely lit though.
It was like Great Gatsby, dude.
It's everybody is dancing and having a great time. When Jack drunkenly is telling Portia about what's going on, it reminded me a lot of like some things you hear about like British nobility, about how somebody will be like a duke and a duchess and have all this status because they still own this like castle.
Oh yeah,
but like zero cash to their name, basically.
Yes. This is a very common thing in Europe, I believe.
And that's kind of what he was saying is like all these guys, they've got their palazzos, but they don't have any money. They don't have any cash.
Well, and they're spending all of their money trying to uphold that look and that status.
And keep the palazzo running.
So they're actually broke, It was crazy. This is like, as this scene at the palazzo with the party unfolded, I started to go, holy shit. It honestly, up until the point where she picks up the photograph, I was just like, they're going to have her killed. Like, he's going to whack her. This dude's got a pistol in his bag. He's going to kill her. Now, by the time she picks up the photo, I'm like, oh my God, they're just setting her up for blackmail. They're going to blackmail Tanya. And I was adamantly in the camp of no. Quentin and Greg do not know each other. Greg being Tanya's husband. There were so many people who were on this last week who were like, it is absolutely a setup. Quentin mentions this cowboy that he was in love with at one point in his life. He tells that long story. He's like, that was the only time I found love. And everything since then has been me focused on beauty. And I thought it was, honestly, because of so many people being on it, I was like, no, that's too obvious. Mike White is this master of red herrings and distraction. And there's only one thread that ever pays off. And he gives you everything else just sort of to make you think. I was wrong. Hand up, both hands up. I was wrong about Cowboy Greg. I'm wearing my cowboy hat today with the Howler Brothers Hawaiian style shirt to kind of pay homage to Greg. When she picked up that photo, man, and first of all, so many people missed what you missed last episode with the child photo, right?
Yeah.
There's still people who are in the camp arguing with me saying, no. It was just a metaphor. She's saying you need to have some kids. And I'm like, no, damn it. Go back and watch the scene again. It's not his kid. It's not Cameron's kid.
Yeah.
There are still people who did not pick up on Greg being the cowboy in the photo.
Oh, yeah, that's Greg.
When she picked it up, I immediately went, holy shit, I was wrong. I couldn't believe it. I was in shock. And the fact, honestly, I get that she's like coked out of her mind. She's been slamming champagne all night. But the fact that she didn't immediately go, oh, fuck, was mind-blowing to me because they've altered Greg to make him a much younger man, right?
Okay.
But it is so clearly him in the photo.
All right. Well, so once again, I'm maybe having missed something. We don't think that she recognizes who that is?
If she recognized who it is, it's weird to me that she continued with the charade. She goes and sits on the bed, keeps hooking up with Nicolo. It's strange.
She seemed
shook though, right?
Yeah, she seemed shook by that.
Yes.
So I don't know. So I'm with you. I thought it was weird that she like continued to carry on.
But we don't see how far she carries on.
We don't see how far she carries it on, and we don't actually, like you said, she's obviously very inebriated. So yeah, that's a good question. What did she or did she not realize?
I almost went to I went so far as to convince myself, well, she's coked out of her skull and been slamming champagne all night. Maybe he wasn't in that photo. Maybe she's hallucinating because I'm still trying to keep myself correct from last week.
So do you think that her life is still in danger with these guys, or do you think it's like a blackmail / break the prenup type, like she violates the terms of the prenup type
her
thing?
Life, I think it's the latter, that they're blackmailing her. They're setting her up. I think when they pan away from Tanya and Nicolo at the very final scene when she's sitting on the bed and he's naked between her legs, clearly about to go down on her or something, I think it was panning out like there's a camera back here or, somebody's watching this and documenting it in some shape or form. Because to your point last week, or it might have been on patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles, you were saying or one of our callers brought up that if you have a prenup and the person dies, then the prenup doesn't impact your inheritance the same way that it would if you got a divorce, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of prenups do have some sort of clause related to infidelity.
Yep.
Where if you cheat, it cancels out any protection you had from the prenup. And I'm guessing that that's the angle that Greg and Quentin are going with here, regardless of the mafia guy, Nicolo, the cocaine.
Right.
I think it's just blackmail. I don't think they intend on murdering Tanya.
Yeah.
Because then I feel like that would bring in way too much suspicion, police activity, investigation. She's worth $500 million, for God's sake. They're not just going to be like, whoop, she died. Some type of investigation would occur. So it's got to be that they think they can blackmail her out of that prenup being effective, right?
Yep.
But I'm also, just to be, completely transparent, I'm still not convinced Greg is in on this.
So I'm with you on that. That was about to be my next question. So do you think that Greg is actually tied to this scheme,
Or is it completely separate
or
of
if
him?
it's separate from the scheme?
The reason I think that there's a 50-50 chance.
Because the blackmail could be that they're going to show all this to Greg.
Right. Sure.
Right?
And then make them pay to keep it quiet or something,
So
right?
you either violate the prenup, Greg will divorce you and you lose half, or you can pay us
Right.
$100 million. Right? Like that, could be that.
And okay, so this is where I'm 50-50 because when you go back to the story Quentin told, it still does make it seem like he says repeatedly, and wouldn't you know it, he was a heterosexual, right? He doesn't give a story about how then their love was destroyed by something else. He says point blank, the guy was a heterosexual. It didn't work out for that reason.
Yep.
My read is that Quentin might be bitter as hell.
Right.
Been chasing this whole time. He happens to find out somehow that Greg has married this heiress.
Yep.
And now he sees an opportunity to sort of get his revenge almost.
Sure.
Because I still see Quentin as this very broken. I mean, the fact that he's got this potential sex worker, fake nephew banging him in his palazzo that he can no longer afford. I still am in the camp of Greg's life was saved by Tanya in season 1. That all the phone calls, yes, you could read it as he was on the phone with Quentin. They were planning this whole thing. I don't think that's going to be it. I still think he comes back and saves Tanya somehow here.
Yeah, I like this because I was one of the I left this episode feeling slightly disappointed at the Greg thing having been true, but if
then you consider the wrinkle.
Then we consider the wrinkle, and that would still kind of subvert the expectation and the theory and the fact that Greg is in on this. And so there's still opportunity to kind of zag instead of zigging. And so I actually think that is more likely. I'm still in the camp that Greg is not
part of this con.
Yeah, malevolently involved with this. I like our story better where this is a separate thing where Quentin just has the connection, but that Greg is not actually working with Quentin to get money.
The other side of this, I did say on Patreon last week, but it seems like if Greg was in on it, it's too much of a Hail Mary. All right, Quentin, I'm going to leave, and then that's going to give you the opportunity to swoop in and con my wife. Now, the only thing that has me thinking, this is why I'm still 50-50, Greg was so upset when Portia was on the trip because Portia was a wrinkle that perhaps could ruin his whole thing. But here's what I'll say. Greg does have something secretive going on, right?
Yes.
So whatever that is, it still could be that Portia threw a wrench in that, whatever that may be, and it could be completely separate. So I'm sitting middle of the road, but I am not firmly in the camp of Greg is in on this with Quentin. They're secret gay lovers, and this is all part of their plan to get half of her money so that they can afford the palazzo and the lifestyle and all of that. It doesn't track all the way for me still.
Yep.
I refuse to be in bed with you people who are fully in the camp of Greg being that guy. Because if that was the type of dude he was, I don't think he ever would have married this woman in the first place. I don't think his con was always to get her money. Looking back at season 1, I guess it's possible, but holy shit, that would be insane. And I think Tanya still continues to serve as our through line for these seasons, and she's got to make it to season 3 kind of unscathed.
Yeah, I think so too.
For it to continue. So, yeah. The only other thing we have to touch on today, Valentina's birthday.
Yes.
This episode.
Yes.
And she invites Isabella to get drinks with her. And they were going to go, but then Isabel tells Valentina, hey, me and Rocco are actually engaged now.
So, okay. One, you could tell all along that Isabella was into the flirtation with Rocco. I had a hunch that they were hooking up at the very least. Turns out
secret dating.
Far deeper than that.
Yeah.
They are straight up engaged now. So that it did not come as a shock to me. What did come as I guess more of a shock is just and I guess it's because she's never been with a woman and hasn't really been sexually active, but my girl Valentina's gaydar is all off, way off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
she doesn't quite have the correct read here. She's slightly, just a bit outside on Isabel.
This was it's a sad moment for Valentina. She's finally putting herself out there, interested in love. She's finally loving love, and she gets a nice consolation prize.
Mia. But love does lose in this case. She ends up hooking up with Mia, who's obviously the piano player now. And it's interesting because the two characters in the after the episode interview this time are Valentina and Mia's actors. And they touch on that usually the dynamic portrayed in television and movies is a man and a woman. I have something to give you, you have something to give me.
Yep.
That makes us work together. But this being a woman and a woman, it was interesting because as Mia's hooking up with Valentina, I'm like, well, what's her angle? How's she working this? What is she going to take over the entire resort, become permanent piano player or whatever?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
So.
But in the end, I really do think it was just Mia is a nice girl. Like she is a nice, I think at her core is a nice person.
I agree, but I think she would like to have that piano job be a little bit more permanent. And
for sure.
And as Bert sitting down there saying, the other guy kind of sucked.
Yeah.
This is good music right here. This is good. This is talent.
What was the other guy's name? Do you remember?
Giuseppe.
By the way, Giuseppe, this is the last thing I'll say today. I'm a little concerned that Giuseppe comes back and thinks that Mia tried to kill him intentionally and seeks revenge on her. That's another one of the possible murder, storylines that could unfold. It seems... I don't know if they're going to bring him back at all.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't see Giuseppe again. No more Giuseppe.
He's still recovering from his Molly overdose.
We don't even know what the fuck he took, yeah. But this scene was really cool. I mean, just from like continuing to explore all these different sexual storylines and sexuality and it was also very sad hearing from Valentina that she's got to be 40 plus.
Right.
Never actually hooked up with a woman. It obviously touches on a lot of it was a closet gay storyline that is a very, very familiar thing for a lot of people, and especially in different cultures, depending on where you're at. It's been a massive problem for the entirety of human existence.
I mean, we have an issue with it here that has gotten better over the years, but certainly in other countries, it's far less
accepted. Yeah, so fun way to tie in some even more, I mean, this show does such a good job of talking about so many different things. And really what it does the best is talk about all the different kinds of relationships and the ways they can unfold and the power structure in them and and all of that stuff. It was amazing. And I mean, you and I will further digest and discuss this episode, The White Lotus, Season 2, Episode 6, driven by hotline calls from members of our Mollusk Militia on patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles later this week. We're actually going to be doing it early this week. We'll be recording on Wednesday. So if you're in the Mollusk Militia, get your calls in now. I reposted the hotline number on Patreon so you can see it right there. Call in now. We're recording Wednesday. It'll drop Wednesday late afternoon. We have so much more that we can delve into regarding Episode 6 because so much happened. It's
this was jam-packed, so I'm sure that there's some little stuff that we've missed. Call in about it. Let us know. Talk to us about it.
And we'll get further into some of the events that occurred in this episode and give further thoughts on some of the bigger picture stuff. So, yeah, even more dissection and digestion of The White Lotus, all of our House of the Dragon hotline episodes, and a companion podcast for every single episode of The Sopranos available to you immediately when you sign up to support our podcast on patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles. We appreciate you so much, those of you who are already there in the Crustacean Nation or the Mollusk Militia. And if you're not, just remember, all of our problems could be solved. If you get us up to like 4,000, 6,000 patrons, we'd appreciate you. Thank you. BolenMedia.com to check out the whole small business I'm running here in Austin, Texas. BolenMedia.com/shop to get yourself some OCC merch. Follow us on social media. We're on TikTok at Oysters, Clams, and Cockles. On Twitter at Clams and Cockles. On Instagram at Oysters, Clams, Cockles. Follow Mr. Barrett Dudley at Barrett Dudley on Twitter and Instagram. I'm Ross Bolen. Follow me at WRBOLEN. WR Bolen on Twitter and Instagram.
Can we get the Blossom Circle?
Oh, I need to get that up this week. Yeah,
on a coffee cup. Put that on a coffee cup too.
Love that idea, Barrett. That'll be available in BolenMedia.com/shop soon. Every episode of our show is available on YouTube, by the way. We appreciate you if you're watching on YouTube. I'll hit you with a cowboy hat tip here. youtube.com/@oysters, clams, and cockles on YouTube. Season finale of The White Lotus Season 2 next week, Barrett. Bodies are going into the ocean. You still think there's a chance anybody's in a boating accident?
I do think there's a possibility of a boating accident, yes. But as you've said a couple things, and then we've said a couple of things. People I'm still worried about are the Youngs, including all of the sex workers: Jack, Mia, Lucia, Albie, Portia. And then I've also got a hunch that among our 5, 6, 7 dead, however many it is, I could see some of the group of the gay guys also being in that mix. Just throwing that one out there too.
I'm really worried about the sex workers. I also do think there's a possibility that the bodies in the ocean are not our only bodies.
There are more bodies.
I'm worried about Bert. He's so old, and he didn't get his homecoming, Barrett. There's no homecoming for Bert, so we'll have to see what there is for Bert. Until next time, Clam Fam.